What do you want your future to look like? How are you going to get there? I'm not going to tell you the story of this journey the way it happened. I'm going to tell it the way I remember it, the way that is true to me. That's what you hear at the top of every RonVanLife episode as its mission. And here's why. I think it's really important for you to understand that a story comes from a specific point of view, and that specific point of view is always from the perspective of the storyteller himself, so to know his story is just as important. Now, to tell you my story, I did something a little bit different than the norm.
Upload an iPhone clip of really any story about me that you want to tell.
3 great old friends each gave an awesome story, and then I called upon the people that I used to work with in high school at this public access television station, which my mom now works at, to get some stock footage of early stuff that I've done. That collaged with photos and current work, I think gives a good perspective of who I am.
Ron Torres, Captain Neon. I could probably do my own vlogging series just about the stories I have with Ron.
The first time I remember having a full conversation with Ron Torres, and this may or may not be correct.
I'd like to tell you a story about a man I know. His name is Ron Torres.
Otherwise known as your friendly neighborhood Ronnie Boy. Nice to meet ya. High five.
I remember randomly just hearing that Frank Marshall, the producer of Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park and the Bourne movies, was going to be in town for the premiere of the latest Bourne movie with Matt Damon, and I was like, oh shit, I bet Ron already knows about this. I wonder if he's going down there. And so I texted him.
I remember it was at a film festival that used to go on in Boise, and I think Ron probably bought me, no exaggeration, I think probably 10 or 11 screwdrivers.
In the early 2000s, Ron and I lived together at the Delta Tau Delta fraternity house at the College of Idaho in Caldwell. One spring Saturday morning, Ron came to my room hungry for pancakes.
You transported me into a world of animation.
Ron does not have a beard. That's why he's younger.
His response was almost immediate that, yes, you had heard he was in a car driving to the movie theater and he had a copy of Carver with him and he was going to give it to Frank Marshall.
My recollection was that Ron was just chatting with me as if he had known me for a while, as if we had some like pre-established relationship. And for some reason I knew who Ron was, but I had never really talked to him. So there was this weird sort of, and it wasn't weird at the time, it was weird in retrospect.
I, being too hungover to make him pancakes, had to give him instructions on how to make Bisquick pancakes, and then send him on his way as I fell back to sleep. A smell woke me up, and I went out into the kitchen to find the source of the smell. And I found Ron standing in front of the stove with a pan with a pancake in it, but the pancake was oddly misshapen and it was surrounded by this shiny, bubbly black substance that I couldn't identify.
Well then, let's move along to our next round, please.
He always wore suits back then. 3-piece suits. You wouldn't know that, no, see me now.
Gentlemen on the inside, ladies on the out.
At this point in our friendship, when Ron says stuff like, hey, I'm going to go hunt down one of the most successful movie producers of the 20th century and not only do that, but give him a copy of your comic, it's not even like a, I wonder how he's going to do that sort of thing.
And what I took away from that was that Ron's point of view was very much different from mine and from a lot of other people I think that are in the film world, which is that I tend to fall in the cynical, we're all fucked if we're trying to make movies. And he had this more optimistic point of view.
As you can see, we have a rather packed crowd tonight.
Doing this shot, they were going super slow on the road. And so they had to make it look like that maybe they were going faster than they really were.
And I asked Ronald, what did you use to grease this pan? And he said, corn oil. And while that would be an unconventional choice, that certainly shouldn't have caused what I was looking at.
I'm super proud that he's doing this video series because I think he's needed to do something like this for himself for a long time. He does it so much for the rest of us. That really, to me, speaks to who Ron is. A freight train on behalf of his friends.
Which means it makes it much more believable and
And it also allows us to hit the talk show circuit, you know, like Sally Jesse and Geraldo and all that stuff.
As I started to understand a lot of his references and the things that he liked, for instance, movies like The Graduate, there was this sense of, this is a person who likes moments in people's lives that define them, that may mean nothing to an audience and may mean nothing without a certain kind of context, but mean something to the person who experienced it.
So I was perplexed, and I looked up into the cabinet, and I saw a bottle. I asked Ron, is this the corn oil that you used? And he said, yes. And I said, Ron, this is corn syrup. And ever the earnest man, Ron looked me right in my eyes, and he said, is that bad?
I hope you, the audience, enjoyed this unique perspective of learning about the storyteller that you're going to be witnessing over the next year. And I hope you look forward to next week, where you're going to see exactly the behind the scenes of how I accomplish RonVanLife.